Welcome into episode 321 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget, Scott, this is probably the kickoff of the offseason episodes. Before we get into the opening shifts, we got 4 teams remaining in the NHL season. We got Florida and the Rangers in the East. We have Dallas and Edmonton in the West. Bridget and Scott, if you could handpick the most entertaining Stanley Cup final of these combinations, what would you like to see? And do you have a team you'd like to see win the cup the most out of the teams remaining?
Ratings wise, absolutely, it would be Edmonton, New York. That would be the ideal situation, I think, for TV and for the NHL, because you have a really strong Rangers team with a huge TV market. And then you got Connor McDavid. And I don't know, because I'm not from Canada. Does the rest of Canada start rooting for whatever the last Canadian team is because they haven't won in so long?
It might take the Canucks fans a while to come around, but maybe.
Not the Canucks fans, but like Toronto and like Ottawa.
Well, it depends, because in 2011, like the entire rest of Canada was rooting for the Bruins, except for like Montreal and Vancouver, because they all hated the Canucks. So
yeah,
I think it kind of depends on the team.
So I'm saying, like,
I do think a lot of them
viewership,
I do think a lot of them would want McDavid to win, though.
I would think, yes, because they're such big McDavid fans. I feel like that would be. So anyway, that's my answer. I think that would be kind of dramatic because McDavid has never really had a chance, and the Rangers are really strong right now, and I think that would be pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I think New York, Dallas would actually be better for ratings, just because Dallas is a major American market. But New York, Edmonton is what I want to see. I feel like that's the most entertaining series. I want to see McDavid have that shot. New York, obviously, huge market, star power in that team. So that would be the one I'd want to see the most.
Is Dallas really a major media market for hockey, though?
It's big enough. It's much better than Edmonton, despite.
Is it bigger than Canada, like Canada as a whole? I guess Canadians are watching no matter what.
The American market in general is so much bigger, and Canadian teams just don't draw on American television. Even one with McDavid on it, which it's a whole separate problem of the NHL not being able to or willing to market stars the way that the NBA or NFL does. Like, hockey has such this culture of it's all about the team, and let's be honest, Connor McDavid's kind of a boring individual anyways. But yeah,
didn't know you were taking shots at Connor McDavid today.
Well, I mean, listen, all you have to do is watch like literally any interview with him. Like, remember at the award show a couple years ago when they were like trying to have fun with him, and he just like couldn't even be bothered to play along, and it was just like the most like lame answers, and I was like, well, guys, you tried. Like, nice try, but sorry, he's just not an entertaining personality.
Pasta is very entertaining.
Yeah. I think it's gonna my picks are Dallas, Florida, though. And Dallas to win it all. I think they're the most
Your
complete
pick
team
is
left.
Dallas, Florida, and Brian, you had Dallas before the season started, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. As Scott mentioned on a previous episode, my Eastern Conference pick is laughable. I wasn't alone in thinking New Jersey would go far, but they didn't even make the playoffs. So I did pick Dallas over New Jersey, but I do think I look at this conference final out west, and Dallas has just so much more depth than the Oilers, especially after their 2 top guys. And the way Dallas has constructed their roster with youth, grit, veterans, skill, buy-in. I like Dallas. I think it'll be Dallas and the Rangers in the finals. But obviously it'd be great for the league for McDavid to win a cup, but then who cares? As far as competitiveness, I think Dallas, the Rangers would be a great series.
I think, to be clear, that I thought that Edmonton Rangers would be fun to watch, and it would be a very interesting, like, dynamic storyline with McDavid there. But I do think Dallas is the best team left.
It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch when 97's out there and when 29's out there. But
Hyman's good, yeah.
It's like half of the Oilers forward core is just like, yeah, it's not that great. So whereas Dallas's third line is Mason Marshman, Tyler Seguin, of getting Nadonov, like, or what's his last name? Dadonov. So it's like there's just a little bit more depth in Dallas, I think. And there's depth in New York. So, and there's depth in Florida. So I think like
And goaltending is
as long as the Oilers don't make the finals, the other 3 teams absolutely deserve to win the Stanley Cup on their depth alone. Like I can see any one of these teams winning. And if the Oilers win, it'll be clearly because of having 2 of the best players on planet Earth. So, but that's what's
anyone think Florida could win?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Yeah.
Sure.
Any of the 4 left could win. Like I don't think there's a huge gap really between any of them. And Florida, again, like they have the depth. They don't have, a superstar like a McDavid or Panarin, but I mean, Barkov, Reinhart, Kachuk, Verhaeghe, like even Bennett, even though he doesn't put up as many points, like it's a damn good team. And Forsling is a true number 1 defenseman. Like
he's amazing.
Yeah,
he's absolutely amazing. I mean, I know people were saying heading into the series against the Bruins that Forsling is somebody to really keep an eye on. He's extremely underrated. He really is an amazing defenseman. Very impressive with his gap control, his skating, his vision, defensive ability. Like very, very underrated defenseman. Absolutely.
By the way, and I hear people say this all the time, I'm not of the same mindset, but are you guys, either of you guys, people who think once your team gets knocked out, you root for the team that knocked you out? Because then that means, you lost to the best. Because I hear that all the time, but I personally just don't.
No, when I was younger, I always wanted the team to beat the Bruins to just lose the next round.
Yeah.
I think you want them to make, at the very least, make it a long series against the Rangers. Like you don't want the Panthers to lose in 5, because then as a Bruins fan, then I think you feel like you're even further away, because it's like, well, you couldn't get past the Panthers, and then the Panthers were overmatched by the Rangers, and you start to play that game of like 1, 2, 3 steps removed. Whereas, if the Panthers make a real series of it, or obviously if they went on to win it all, like you feel like, okay, like we were close. We get a couple more bounces. We're in a game 7 against them, and you can do what some Bruins did on Breakup Day, which, by the way, we are going to get into. That's going to be the bulk of this episode. But you can play the game of like we were right there. Like we're not that far off.
It kind of depends. It's not black and white. It kind of depends on how good the Bruins were. What was their path afterwards? How likable was the team they played against? Like I remember in 2009 when Scott Walker and the Hurricanes beat the Bruins in Game 7. They couldn't have gotten swept fast enough against Pittsburgh. I hated that Hurricanes team. They couldn't have gotten swept quick enough. This Florida team, I mean, like I thought they played a good hard series. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy, but it just depends on the series and how far I think the Bruins probably would have gone anyway. Like that Flyers series in 2010, like you're up 3-0 to the Flyers, 3-0 in Game 7, you lose. Your conference final opponent that year would have been an underdog Montreal Canadian team. If the Bruins beat the Flyers that year, do they go on to beat the Canadians and then the Blackhawks? Probably not, because they had some injuries of their own up front in Boston. But in general, I think what Scott says accurate. Like you don't want them to get swept, except for the 2009 Hurricanes, but you don't really want them to go too far. At least I don't.
All right, do you want to get into our opening shifts now that we've gone on our other NHL, our out of town topics?
Sure. Why don't you start us off, Bridget?
Yeah. So my opening shift, and these are all going to be keys from Breakup Day, just news that came out, forward-looking topics as well. But mine is kind of, it has to do with the injuries that guys were dealing with throughout the season that we didn't know until they started talking about it after the season ended. So Breakup Day was on Sunday. Scott and I it was literally the exact time as Sunday Skate. It was 9 to noon, which was the same time as Sunday Skate. So we went back, we listened to all of the interviews and whatnot. Would have been nice to be there because I did have some questions that I didn't hear anyone ask. But so I guess the big injury stuff to come out, there was nothing like huge, like, okay, this person played with a broken foot or whatever. But some of the updates were interesting. I didn't realize Lindholm had played in February. He got injured, a knee injury against Dallas, and he had been playing with a knee brace on for a bit after that. So Lindholm had a lower body injury. They had Forbert said that his surgeries were in fact groin and thumb. So those were his two surgeries. Both groins and thumb. So, you know, he had it probably the hardest. We knew he had gone through surgeries. We had thought that it was a groin injury because he had a lingering one. But I think it was surprising to hear that Pastrnak was going through something lingering with his groin on and off throughout the season. And he said it wasn't affecting him in the playoffs. But groin injuries, sometimes they come back and they nag. And, you know, I don't know if his is enough to need surgery. He said it wasn't bothering him in the playoffs, which makes me think maybe it'll heal in the off season and it should be fine. But yeah, and I had thought that maybe Brendan Carlo had an injury towards the end of the playoffs, but he said he health-wise felt fine. So if he's being upfront about it, he, I guess, maybe had fewer minutes because of situational, something Montgomery wanted to do. Or anyway, yeah, he said he didn't deal with any injuries this postseason.
Yeah, a couple others I'll note. Charlie McAvoy said he was dealing with a shoulder injury, an AC joint injury that he called annoying and said it lingered like pretty much all year. But he could play through it. You know, I guess slightly concerning in the sense that he's already had a major shoulder surgery in his career. So anything shoulder related, you know, you just hope that heals 100%. Matt Grzelcyk, when he missed time back in October and November, he said that was a torn oblique. He was on long-term IR at the time. And Danton Heinen, we know, missed some time in the playoffs. He didn't want to go into it. He just said it was like a lingering issue. So, yeah, we can maybe circle back to some of that. But my opening shift is another breakup day takeaway. Interesting. Scrum was Linus Ullmark, who, you know, obviously was asked about trade rumors and what his future looks like. And at first he answered in kind of classic Ullmark fashion, saying, my future here, I have one more year. I'm excited about what's to come. Obviously he knows what the question was getting at, and he did open up more as his press availability went on and talked about how, you know, he doesn't want to be traded because he likes it here and his family likes it here and he's been treated well and he likes his teammates. But he also acknowledged the reality that he only has so much control over it. He has currently a 16-team no trade clause, goes down to 15 teams on July 1st. So he said he negotiated for that list for a reason. The teams that are on it are on there for a reason. So it sounds like there are at least some teams that he would still block a trade to. Even though, you know, getting traded over the summer is easier than getting traded in season. But clearly there's still some places he wouldn't want to go. And he negotiated for that. Like, he earned that right.
Yeah, I guess it's probably it's more well known among players which organizations you kind of just don't want to go to. Like, guys have certain things on their list and I heard Swayman subtly like say, you know, how happy he is to be here because he knows that not every team and not every player in the NHL feels the same way about being where they are and being in a certain organization. So like, clearly there's behind the scenes, like, guys talk and they know, like, okay, I wouldn't want to go to X organization because this is what it's actually like there. And it's not like Boston. So, and Ullmark, by the way, he did also mention about the trade talks during the trade deadline. So, I mean, I think it's pretty clear at this point that the situation that was reported on was true. Because Ullmark even himself confirmed that, like, that was the first time he's ever been part of trade talks, and had to get, you know, obviously got called in and he had to either confirm or deny the trade. And we all know he stayed in Boston. So I think that was a very accurate report, based on, you know, Ullmark's own comments. So, And he's probably going to be dealing with the same thing this offseason.
Okay, so we'll definitely, Sorry, Scott, do you have anything else left there?
No, that was pretty much it. Again, just like he did eventually acknowledge, there's only so much he can do, and we will definitely be getting into like, I think we all think the Bruins will and probably should trade him this offseason, but how that looks and how it plays out is going to be fascinating.
I do feel bad because the human side of it is like he clearly wants to be here, but there's just no way contract wise you fit both those guys in after this season. And like in an ideal world, this is where he wants to play. And I do think that though he was kind of saying it in a little bit of a joking way, I have one more year. Like deep down, I think he hopes that he is here the whole final year of his contract. But I think like realistically, like you said, like he only has so much control over it.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot to talk about with that. And, to that last comment, Bridget, I think, from a family perspective and a regional perspective, he might love the area. He might love where his kids are in school. He might love his home. So maybe reasons like that, he doesn't want to leave. From the hockey perspective side of things, he might prefer to be a number one guy somewhere else and not play second fiddle to Swayman going forward. So,
but I think that in his mind, he thinks like I could just as easily win the job back.
He might think that.
So like they go through another regular season of them almost being 50-50 alternating, that's not like he was clearly comfortable with that and happy with that. So then he just thinks at the end of the season, if I just outdo him, then it's me in net for the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like in his mind, that's probably a fair future of like what he would want and what he thinks could be possible.
And then move on the following year. But
we've seen it before, right? Tuukka Rask won the job from Tim Thomas, and then Tim Thomas won it back and won a cup the next season.
But again, Jeremy Swayman's, we all hope going to get signed this summer, and so he's locked up he'll be locked up long term, hopefully. And so if Ullmark does feel that way, Bridget, and he might, it would be forward looking to 24-5, and I think after that he would know he's done. So it's more of just it's an inevitability, I think, and he's going to have to probably get warm to the idea of him playing outside of Boston, whether it's next year or the years to come. So we'll get back into that. I want to start with Jake DeBrusk and clarify my opinion on him based on something I said last episode, because Bridget and Scott, we do 3 episodes a week, somewhere between 4 to 6 hours of content, depending on the episode lengths and what we're talking about. It is occasional that, I will say something and misspeak or use the wrong word or whatnot. So I want to clear the air here while I have the microphone. Last episode, I made a comment and I said, I'm not sure if Jake DeBrusk is a bona fide top 6 forward. The key word there, which I said, was bona fide. Unfortunately for me, I misused the word, because if you look up the word bona fide, it means genuine, real, legitimate. And what I meant to say, or what I should have said, is I'm not sure if Jake DeBrusk is a top tier, top 6 forward. And I just want to break this down a little bit, because generally speaking, Jake DeBrusk is absolutely a top 6 forward in the NHL. But when you guys and myself talk about personnel for the Bruins, I don't know about you two, but my prerequisite in my mind is for a championship roster, right? Like we're talking about for an optimal championship roster. And if you look at the teams remaining in the NHL playoffs, Jake DeBrusk would have a hard time being on the top 6 in Dallas with Jamie Benn and Jason Robertson on the left side. He'd have a tough time being on a top 6 role in New York with Artemi Panarin and Chris Kreider on the left side. He'd have a tough time being on the top 6 in Florida with Carter Verhaeghe and Vladimir Tarasenko on the left side. He would probably be in Edmonton's top 6, absolutely. But I also, like I said before, think Edmonton has the least amount of depth. So for a championship caliber roster, I think Jake DeBrusk probably slides in on a second line or ideally a third line role. Now, with that said, when I said last episode, I think I don't know if Jake DeBrusk is a bona fide top 6 forward. I objectively am wrong because I misused the word bona fide. He is a real, genuine top 6 forward for 95% of the league. But if you want to be that last team standing, I'm not sure he is, and I'm not sure he should be paid as such. If you guys will indulge me, I just want to read off a couple of statistics to support that he is a top 6 forward in general. He has 266 points in 465 regular season games. That's an 82 game average of 47 points. Under Bruce Cassidy, he had 176 points in 321 games for an 82 game average of 45 points. Under Jim Montgomery, he has 90 points in 144 games at an 82 game average of 51 points. So under Jim Montgomery, Jake DeBrusk's 82 game average point total is 6 points more than the average under Bruce Cassidy. Still, overall, he's a 47-point guy at an average of 82 games in his career. He's making $4 million right now. Should he be making more than Brad Marchand at 6'1", Chris Kreider at 6'5"? The top guys, there are certain top 6 forwards where no matter what team or roster they're on, there's no doubt they're a top 6 player on that team. Jake DeBrusk, I think, is a top 6 forward on most teams, but on the teams that have the most depth, the championship depth, I think he's probably a third line guy that is making somewhere between $5 and $5.5 million. So if he wants to take that money on this next contract, he is welcome on my team any day of the week, twice on Sunday. If he wants to make Brad Marchand money or more, like the true top 6 guys in the league, where no matter what team they're on, they're a top 6 forward, I'm sorry, he's not getting it if I were Don Sweeney. So look, if you disagree with me, that's fine. That's ultimately my opinion on the player.
Yeah, I do think he's, I think he's playing on the second line on just about every team that's left. Dallas maybe being the one exception because they are so loaded and so deep up front. But like the Rangers have 3 top 6 wings, so there'd be an obvious opening there. I would take DeBrusk over Tarasenko at this point. Edmonton, you mentioned, like, yeah, that's definitely one. But to me, like the larger point there, or to build off, is DeBrusk was, or should have been, or had to be, the Bruins' 3rd best winger this year, behind Pastrnak and Marchand. And that's where it's like you want, and by the way, we hate to say it, but like Marchand's not an elite scoring winger anymore. He's still a very good one. But ideally you want a second, like really high-end scoring wing. Like when you look at Florida, and it's like Reinhart, Tkachuk, and then even Carter Verhaeghe is the 3rd best wing. It's like, you don't have that. Panarin, Kreider, even Lafreniere coming on with a strong year. Like, you clearly need an upgrade there. And the question is whether, can you, like, if you run it back with the same wings, is that good enough? We all agree they need help at center. But even at wing, is that good enough? Or, as I laid out in the last episode, can you take the money you were going to use on DeBrusk and pour that into, instead of spending $5-6 million on him, can that help you get an $8, $9, $10 million player who comes in with more pedigree, who's more proven, who's more consistent, who's done in the playoffs, who's won at that level? Like, does that help you get that player? Because that would be the ideal scenario. We can, as we continue to go through this episode and through the offseason, we will discuss, can you do that? I have some questions, but that would be like the perfect scenario.
It just comes down to money for me. Like, if he's making $6 million or more, personally, I wouldn't do it, because he's currently making $4 million. What has he done in the last 2 years to gain a $2 million raise in his next contract? If he falls somewhere between 5 and 5.5, like, that's great. The cap's going up. You have all this cap space. Like, I'm all for it. So it's not that I don't like the player, don't want him on the team. It's like everybody. It's about, make sure you're paying, you're not overpaying for him. That's the only situation.
And I think the other interesting part of all of this is that they could have gotten an extension done during the season. They could have gotten it done during last offseason, but they waited. And they maybe, might have to pay more than that now, Brian, because he's had a good playoffs. And he was their leading point scorer and goal scorer this year in the playoffs. And he's had success in the playoffs in the past as well. So maybe the price went up a little bit, might be inflated, but compared to if they had tried to sign an extension earlier. But Scott, during breakup day, he did speak about where his conversations have been, where they're at with the Bruins in terms of getting an extension. I don't know if you had the quote up in front of you, but obviously this was a big topic because he's the free agent that's coming available on your team that is of the most value, I would say, and probably is going to get more offers from other teams that could potentially drive the price up.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked straight up, are you surprised there wasn't a deal done already? And he said yes. He said, if you had told me at the beginning of the season that I'd be standing here without a contract, I would have thought you were lying. So he clearly wanted to get a deal done during the season and expected one to get done, and it didn't. Now, listen, people on both sides can fib a little, but it sounds to me like he wanted to get something done, and the Bruins were probably the ones who pushed it to the offseason. And usually, if we look at Don Sweeney's history, usually when they let someone get to the offseason, especially one of their own guys, not a deadline edition, usually they don't bring them back. That's kind of been Don Sweeney's MO, is if you're one of their own guys and they want to extend you, they get it done during the year or even a full year out. So writing on the wall kind of looks to me like he's gone. But obviously there is still time between now and July 1st for them to negotiate before he hits the open market. And I think the Bruins should be negotiating and at least getting an understanding of like what the price point's going to be, because again, I said it'd be great if hey, if you let him walk and take that money, turn around, sign one of the big guys, great. The problem is those guys have to get to the open market. The Florida Panthers have cap space, and I promise you they want to keep Sam Reinhart. Sam Reinhart might not be there on July 1st. The Carolina Hurricanes gave up a lot to get Jake Gensel. He was great for them. They have cap space. I'm sure they're going to be talking to Jake Gensel trying to get something done. He might not get to the open market.
Yeah, and he also has said he might want to go back to Pittsburgh. So, you're probably not his first, Boston's probably not his first option.
I mean, I'm sure Boston becomes his first option if you offer the most money, but, again, the Bruins have cap space right now, 21 to 22 million, possibly add 5 million more onto that if you trade Ullmark. But, are you going to be willing to throw 10 million of it to Jake Gensel to make sure you blow the other offers? It's a tough way to do business. There's a reason that, free agent champs don't usually win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and something else to consider too, and also while we're talking about Scott, you mentioned that you'd probably prefer DeBrusk over Tarasenko, and that you think he would be a top 6 on most of these teams. Again, it's not. He probably could be. I mean, he was a top 6 forward on the 2019 Bruins that were a game away from winning the Stanley Cup. And if anybody was on that line that wasn't a top 6 forward, it was Carson Kuhlman or David Backes at that point. And Jake DeBrusk was also in the top 6 of a team last year that had the greatest record in the history of the NHL, and lost in the first round, not due to a lack of offense. And Jake DeBrusk was also, I think, as I said for the last month, the Bruins' best forward, I think, in the playoffs from start to finish, at least one of them. So it just comes down to dollars and cents for me, and it's about the right dollar amount for the right player. And it's not as easy and simple as go sign Sam Reinhart like you're talking about, Scott. Teams have the Bruins might be in a situation where they might have to overpay Jake DeBrusk to keep that caliber of player. So there's a lot of factors at play here, and it makes it difficult to discuss. But yeah, it's definitely what I was going to say was if the Bruins decide to go out and get a top 2 center, Charlie Coyle's not going to go to the wing. I think he's going to probably stay at center ice. I think, maybe Pavel Zacha is moved over to the left side, and you have a top 6 left wing already in house next year because you bring in a true top 2 center, and that moves him to the left side. So, and then maybe DeBrusk goes to the right side. So again, I just want the Bruins to properly spend on what players are based on how they performed. That's all.
Yeah, and prioritize probably center over paying a whole lot of money to a winger. But we're going to have other shows about this. I want to have a show specifically about like centers that might be available.
Sidney Crosby.
Sidney Crosby, of course, high on the list.
Crosby and Gensel, get them in the other black and gold.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. Like, I was always a big Sidney Crosby fan, so but I know that that's impossible. But 16-year-old Bridget would have been thrilled if that had happened at some point. But no. So I want to do a whole in-depth look at realistic center options for Boston this offseason at some point, because I think it's important. And I also I'm not sold on Zacha as one of my top 2 centers. I like him better maybe as a wing option, which is, a whole conversation in and of itself. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about with DeBrusk, or you want to move on to some other contracts that were talked about on Breakup Day that and where the negotiations would be for those.
Yeah, the one last point I would make on DeBrusk is, Brian, as you said, like getting it at the right value. That's also where there's value in negotiating now, and not letting him get to the open market, because if he really wants to be here, like he says, maybe he takes 5.5, 5 years, 5.5, if that's on the table right now. But if you wait till July 1st because you think you want to make a run at someone else, all right, well, that means someone else could swoop in and offer him 6.5. And now all of a sudden the price has gone up, and DeBrusk says, hey, you know what? I did want to stay in Boston, but now I have this offer sitting here, and the Bruins are, they're out chasing whoever. I think I'm just going to sign this. This is pretty good. This is what I want. So, like, there's also that risk of, but be careful what you wish for. Like, right. you let him get to the open market because you want to chase something better. You might end up in a situation where you end up with nothing, and now you're going, oh, crap, who else is out there?
But there is actually a pretty large market for free agent left wingers this year. Like, if you look at the other names that are available,
but everyone has cap.
In what way? No, like if you look at the list,
a lot more teams have cap space this year than last year. So yes, there's players out there, but like I think it's gonna be a much more active free agent period than last year, where I think guys are gonna come off the boards pretty quick because teams have money to spend.
If news comes down tomorrow that the Bruins have reached an agreement with Jake DeBrusk, and it's a fair value deal somewhere in the $5 million range. Again, he's making $4 now. So to jump from 4 to 6 based on his last couple of years, I don't know how anybody could think that that's fair to the Bruins. So if they reach a deal tomorrow and it's somewhere in the $5 million range, then maybe 5.5. Like I'm thrilled about that. So it's all about the value here. And Pavel Zacha, you mentioned, Bridget, not being sold to him being a top 2 center. That's totally valid. But what you do have in him right now is just about a 60-point guy in his tenure under Boston in the regular season. So that's a good player to have in your top 6.
I'd be happy with him on the wing just as much as, like, if you are able to find a good match for a center you could put next to Pasta and keep Zacha out there as a winger on that line and have like a really strong Zacha, Elias Lindholm, Pasternak line, that would be something that I think would be a huge positive if you could roll something like that out next season. So what I'm saying is I don't necessarily see him as only a center. So like I think he's in the top 6, but he might not be one of your 2 centers. He might be on your wing. So that's what I meant by that. But in terms of the other contracts that or free agents that the Bruins have upcoming, Grzelcyk was interesting. He said he had not had any conversations with the Bruins involving an extension. So I feel like that tells us everything we really need to know. If they don't even throw him an offer, like I'd be a little surprised if they don't even, but maybe they just really know that the future for him isn't here.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. Like,
I just mean like
Mason Lohrei took his job. I don't think he's giving it back, and you probably want more size and physicality lower in your lineup. So
I wouldn't be surprised based on performance wise and fit. I don't think the fit's here, but he's just maybe more of just a meeting rather than an offer on like, hey, this is what we're looking for in the future, and sorry, like, but when free agency hits, like, go ahead and negotiate wherever you want.
They have those meetings with everyone. They just hadn't happened yet by Sunday morning.
Yeah, so that'll probably happen, but I mean,
I think those are all later in the day. Like I think Sunday morning was breakup day media, and then because they were all at Warrior all day, so as the day went on, I think that's when all the one-on-one meetings with Sweeney were as the day went on.
I do think that Pasta and Zacha might have taken a flight out at some point after the media session, though. Like, so maybe they went early in their meetings with Sweeney, because I know they flew out to Prague to be with the Czech national team. So, but yeah, it's a long day. That day is a real long day for them. And now they're somewhere on a flight, or yesterday on a flight to somewhere, TBD. We don't know. All we know is they're all on a plane together besides Zacha and Pasta.
And they're having fun, and some people hate that they are having fun.
It really bothers me because I was never, a professional athlete. I wasn't even a college athlete, but like, so when you're never going to have the same group of people together again, because obviously some people are leaving from free agency and what have you, like, and you're just all genuinely close to each other. Why can't you just have one last trip together and, enjoy the time that you have? I don't know. That take bothers me because these guys, it's about them being friends with each other. It's not about being sad the whole summer that you lost in the second round. Like, I don't know. Take it as a positive thing that they actually like each other and they're happy to be together and they want to spend time with each other.
I was going to say, would you rather have the team where the season ends and everyone can't wait to get away from each other because there's infighting and guys don't get along? Like, you can have that team if you want. Yeah, I have no issue with it. The Bruins have done it for a few years now.
Last year they went to a Premier League soccer game.
Yeah, and it's a little like, on the one hand, I get it. Fans want to see athletes look like as miserable or as down as they are when the season ends, but I think you got that too. Like, if you watch like the guys' press conferences after Game 6 that night or on breakup day, like I think you got a lot of disappointment, and like I don't. That's not for show. Like that is how those guys feel, but they are also wired and conditioned differently, because you can't be a pro athlete if you can't turn the page quickly on stuff. Like, whether that's in game, whether it's a bad game, whatever it is, like, you have to put stuff in the past quickly and move on. And so, no, they're like, sorry that they're not going to be miserable for 3 weeks after the season ends. They are going to blow off some steam and be able to have a good time and smile. And like, that doesn't mean they don't care. It doesn't mean they're happy the season's over. Like, it doesn't mean any of that. It just means they can compartmentalize and get away from the games and like not dwell on it, as long as maybe some fans do, which I know is frustrating.
Yeah, but I just doubt fans have sat around these last, however many days since the season ended and were sad the whole time. Like, They probably
Oh,
gone out on.
I
Probably
used
went
to.
out for drinks on Saturday and like.
I used to be
that room
devastated.
Brian's in. This is the first time the light's been on since the season.
So we know that they're on their way somewhere because Parker Weatherspoon posted a video of them on the plane, playing some sort of game, and we just don't know where the planes landed. Last year it was Europe, so who knows where they're going this year? But
yeah, I mean, there's nothing they can do about it. Like the season's over. It's gonna be a new group. These guys have a couple of months, and then they got to get back into training. Probably sometime in maybe late July or early August, and then it's camp, and then what are they supposed to not go to any Memorial Day cookouts or 4th of July parties? They're supposed to sulk all summer. They can only do so much. It's done.
Right.
It's done.
And some of these guys are going to be traded or signing elsewhere very soon. So it's like either you do it now or you don't do it at all, really.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some guys are legit. Yeah, exactly, Scott. People are going to be looking for new homes, new apartments, new schools for their families based on free agency or whatnot. So,
And also just flying back to their country, like Lindholm will go back to Sweden for a little bit. Like guys will go back to their hometowns and not be in Boston. Like some guys stick around Boston, but most people at least spend some time back home with their families, see their parents, see their friends and whatnot.
So yeah, I mean, any hysteria over this is just, it's just silly. Scott, do we want to go back to the Ullmark conversation, or was there something else in between?
I'm good with going back to Ullmark. I think
I think Ullmark and Swayman contracts are probably next on the list for us here.
Yeah, and obviously those two are tied together. And I led with Ullmark, but Swayman also talked about his future and said that he wants a long-term extension and he expects one to get done. I also expect that to get done. I don't know what the exact timing will be. Obviously his playoff changes some of it. Like obviously it gives him and his agent a stronger leg to stand on. So the price probably went up a little and they have to figure out, they were probably, I think those negotiations had already been happening. So now it's just the readjustment of, okay, how much did they go up and figuring that out. And then related to that, you have to decide how much money you want invested in the goalie position total. Because if Swayman jumps up to, say it comes in at $8 million, like say it really is one of those high-end contracts, that's $13 million. And I just think that's too much with what they have to add offensively. Like you probably want that money to go towards upgrading your offense. And so, yeah, they're great friends and Linus Ullmark loves it here. And you want players who want to be here, but it's also a business. And Don Sweeney's job is to build the best roster, and having, a $5 million 1B goalie when you now have a 1A that you trust in the playoffs, that you've seen do it in the playoffs, is, I think it's hard to make the case that, that's what's best for next year's team.
Yeah, like if you think about where the $5 million could go, it could go to a top 6 forward. It could go to maybe adding 2 good forwards. If that's what you deem that you need, which I think they do. So it's really about, and it stinks, like you do need to get a good return for him. Like you're not trading him. And that's why he hasn't been traded yet, is because first of all, they weren't in the last offseason, they weren't getting offers that they thought were a fair deal for him. They thought he was worth more than what they were, than the deals that they were getting. So they didn't do it then. And then obviously they shopped around at the trade deadline, found something they liked, but it didn't go through. So back to the drawing board for them, and what their value is for him. Probably, I mean, he potentially could have gone down after he sat this playoff run, though I think everybody still understands that he is that same goalie from last year. He didn't have a down year. I think you guys would both agree with me that he didn't have a down year. He just got in a situation where they had another really good goalie that ran with it. So I think teams still value him really highly in terms of a goalie market, but you still want to see what you can get. Maybe you recoup a draft pick, because we were joking on Sunday Skate. They have their earliest pick of this draft is in the 4th round. So maybe you can recoup something there, or get maybe a prospect or something. But a big part of it is the ability to have that extra $5 million available somewhere else. Brian, you are muted.
Oh, sorry. Probably to the pleasure of many. So there's the benefit, the cap benefit, right? Now, we've come to find out, it seems like the Bruins, despite having 2 really good goaltenders, strong goaltenders, it seems like when push comes to shove in the postseason, they probably will never really go to the full goalie rotation platoon in the playoffs from what we've seen. So that kind of tells us that in the postseason, they'll probably go with 1 guy. Okay. So in the regular season, if Linus Ullmark is no longer around and he can't carry, the 45 games or whatever that he played this past year, split the games with Jeremy Swayman, what's the proper start load for Jeremy Swayman in an 82 game season without Linus Ullmark? Are you still looking to have a season where he's starting 45, 50 games? Or do you want him to start 20 and somebody starts 22? How does life change without Ullmark? And do you think they have somebody in the system that could potentially play 45% of the games?
Razor said that the answer is not within the system when we talked to him.
Well, and obviously Razor knows goalies better than I do. I will also say Razor is a overbake the prospects type of guy. Like he wants guys to like be in the AHL until it's like beyond clear that they're ready. I am not like I'm like that to an extent where like, I don't think there's harm in spending extra time in the minors, but I also feel like at some point you got to give guys a shot. And if you have a competition for the backup goalie job between Brendan Bussey and Michael DiPietro, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay with that. And Razor's point would be like, well, what if something happens to Swayman? Well, when you build a team that now has a number 1 goalie instead of a 1A and 1B, that's going to be an issue no matter what. So I do take Razor's point that there's value in going and getting, $1.5 million backup who's at least played in the NHL and has the experience and you think is going to be pretty solid. But to me, it's like, is there any guarantee that guy, if something happens to Swayman, that guy's going to be better than Bussey or DiPietro? Like, to me, there's not.
He kind of laughed at me when I brought it up. I mentioned Brendan Bussey at the end. I was like, well, could it be Bussey? And he was like, no, like he's never played a game in the NHL.
If it's not Bussey has to clear waivers to get sent down next year. So you might end up losing Brandon Bussey for nothing.
What would Razor have said back in like 2014, 15, whatever it was, if Tuukka Rask went down and they had to go to Alex Auld or they had to go to Chad Johnson? Like, what was he saying then? I mean, the idea
Nicholas
of losing
Edberg or Jonas Gustafsson or
right, exactly. Like the idea of, oh, what if your goalie goes down and that's a problem that literally every NHL team besides the Bruins pretty much have ever.
Yeah. And by the way, you do have to at some point see what you have in Brendan Bussey at the NHL level. And like Scott mentioned, he'd have to clear waivers next year. So to me, from what I've seen from him, small sample size, but I think he's pretty good. Like I was pretty comfortable with his progression so far. And is he going to be as good as Ullmark? No. Is he at the point in his career where he could really benefit from getting ice time and being a backup in the NHL? Sure. I think he's a good goalie prospect, and I think he has a lot of upside and potential. So, and I think personally, it's your cheapest option. It's a bigger risk. There's no doubt about that. But if he does good in preseason, I don't know. But obviously at that point in time, you would have already had to have either brought in a a backup goalie or not, really. Like, you probably would have already made that deal some point in the offseason. So, yeah, just something to think about. I think I'm a little bit higher on Brendan Bussey than Razor is, but I can't really question him in terms of the goaltending department. I usually just defer to him because obviously he has a way more deep background with not only just knowing the position, but also knowing the guys in the league that are available. So.
Yeah, I mean, Razor's credibility is through the roof, and his opinion should be held with very high regard. He's been there, he's done that. But somebody who also has a ton of credibility is goalie coach Bob Essenza and the Boston Bruins organization. And I think when it comes to goaltending, the Bruins as an organization and Bob Essenza have earned the trust of fans and spectators and analysts that if the team decides to do something and move on from a goaltender and bring up a goaltender from the minors, whatever, they've at least earned the trust that they've earned the benefit of the doubt that, like, okay, yeah, they probably are onto something and this goalie will probably excel because goaltenders excel with the Boston Bruins. And so while Razor has credibility from experience and knowing the game and playing the game at that level and at a high level himself, goalie coach Bob Essenza and the Bruins organization also have credibility as well.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and like, look, you can find a veteran who will, not the $1.5 million guy that Razor wants, like a proven NHL backup, but you can find some sort of fringe veteran guy who can come play in the AHL for you. And then, like, at least that's like the Bruins have done that before, like Keith Kincaid, Troy Grzelcyk, someone like that who, is at least something other than a completely unproven kid. But yeah, I guess, like, at the end of the day, I'm not opposed to signing $1.5 million backup. Like, there are worse ways to use money. I would just say, like, if the difference is, hey, that extra $800,000 can be used in my pursuit of a center or wing, I'm using it there. And, like, I'll gladly just fill in goalie with Bussy and DiPietro and let them battle it out in camp.
Guys, while we're recording, there's also a trade in the National Hockey League worth mentioning. Nothing crazy, but just maybe helps put things into perspective about what a player could go for at a point in their career. So the Tampa Bay Lightning have received Ryan McDonough from Nashville and a 24 fourth-round pick from Edmonton. And the Predators get a 2025 second-round pick and a 24 seventh-round pick. So Ryan McDonough, good veteran defenseman, goes back into the Bruins division. Thoughts on that trade, Scott, Bridget? Is that too much for McDonough? Too little? Is it a good, and what like, how could that be a point of teams could be creative with trades and whatnot?
I mean, my initial reaction is, a second for McDonough at this point in his career is fairly steep, but Lightning definitely needed defense help. And obviously they know McDonough. He's been there before. He's a leader, all that. So from that perspective, like, it makes sense to me that, I think that makes a lot of sense for the Lightning. It feels like exactly the kind of player they need. And, especially if you're looking ahead at, like, there's a chance that they're going to lose Steven Stamkos this offseason. I think everyone still expects him to get something done eventually, but it hasn't happened yet, and he might end up on the open market. Then you would really need leadership, and McDonough can help there as well.
I wanted to ask you guys, I want to pull up this tweet from John Buccigross. I think it was earlier today or last night, but basically he listed off, I'm trying to find it, but he listed off a few different cities in the NHL, Florida, Vegas, Tampa Bay, and Nashville, and some others, and just kind of talking about how, the tax advantages that those teams have in a hard cap league, and The responses were kind of funny. It was a bunch of people being like, yeah, they should just get rid of all the state taxes statewide just to accommodate the NHL. But I don't know. Do you guys have any opinions on that? Just in general, like competitive advantages for certain cities with tax advantages for players signing.
Well, I think there's competitive advantages for cities for different reasons. Florida's advantages, the tax reasons. I believe Texas also is pretty decent. Like it's not as bad there either. Boston is just a destination for culture, for a team culture, I should say. I'm not saying like Southie culture is the best thing ever, like masshole culture. No, I'm talking about team culture.
Though. It is.
Yeah, no, not quite.
It's actually the Southie is the peak of human culture.
I had a conversation with Rick Nash about how much he hated the traffic in Boston, so that might be a negative. But yeah, there's different reasons for people to want to go different places. We talked about European guys maybe being a little bit easier to keep in touch with your family or go see your family when you're on the East Coast rather than West Coast. Weather in different states is awesome compared to like Winnipeg or, some colder destinations. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that goes in it. I don't think that, it does help. It has to help Florida somewhat to be beautiful all year round and you not have to pay income tax. So
yeah, it definitely does. Again, like you just have to find, like, absolutely for hockey, Boston has its own advantages, and Bridget, you mentioned some of them. It's, it's an original six team that is always in it. They're always competitive. They have this culture that everyone speaks very highly of. And like, that's, all the people want to rip the Bruins, for getting on a plane and hanging out together. Like, well, that's part of it. Players it's like part of that.
Why it's people want to come here.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like the tax stuff matters, weather matters, like, but you just have to find the right player, right? Like if, you go into free agency and one guy that you might have been targeting, his agent says, oh yeah, he's looking for warm weather or he's looking for low taxes. All right, then you're out. Then you're not getting that player. Go find the guy who wants to be in, a big hockey market and wants to be on a team that's competitive every year, because there's going to be plenty of guys who want that too.
Yeah, if those are your two priorities, I'm not sure how much I would want to add you, because like your leading priorities should not be weather and taxes. Your leading priorities should be fit.
It can be whatever you want it to be. Like
yeah, it can be, but like it seems like those are. I would think that you would want to add someone that's highest motivation is to win, and that really just likes your organization and wants to be, wants to be on a.
But it can be both. Like Matthew Tkachuk wanted to go to Florida because of the weather.
And that is a winning team. That's a winning team as well. Yeah.
So I was on Bucci's Twitter right now because I couldn't find the tweet, and I'm like, did I just wrongfully quote Bucci for saying that? But I typed it in the search bar. I typed in some keywords, and his tweet did come up, but it's from June 30th, 2019. So I don't know if somebody quote tweeted him and it was in my timeline or somebody retweeted it, but it popped up in my timeline.
2019.
The tweet was from 5 years ago for some reason. That's why I couldn't find it on his page recently. But
point still stands.
The tweet said, yeah, it's a timeless tweet. It says the Panthers, Lightning, Stars, Vegas, Predators, and soon Seattle all have no income tax advantage. Does that seem quite fair in a hard cap league unless I'm missing something? But yeah, anyway, the points stand. I think for players that want to go to certain cities, I think the cities with the most sun and then the cities with the most history are the ones that, as a player, are the funnest to play in. I know Toronto might not be the funnest city with the media, but if you could play for an original six team or a team that you can wear sandals to the rink every day for practice, tax advantage or not, those are probably the most coveted teams to play for. But anyway, I guess it was a pretty random tweet that came up. So
yeah, when I sign my next deal, I will be considering all those things.
Yeah, it's kind of relevant. We have free agency coming around the corner and stuff, so these are factors that play into it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Factors for Boston, great school system for players' kids. Obviously the best hospitals in the country and best sports city, I think, in the country. And
I think a
so
lot of them live in the North End. A lot of them like that area of the city where their food is great and there's a lot going on. And the fact that there's a basketball team and a baseball team and it's just a good and a football team. And a lot of the guys are soccer fans, so they go to the Revs. There's a lot of other sports and athletes around as well. So. But anyway, was there anything else you wanted to talk about contract-wise? Some guys we didn't really touch on that are going to be free agents, like Forbert or Maroon.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Maroon because boy did he lay it on thick. Like, obviously, everyone is a pending free agent. At least here, usually says they want to stay. They loved it here. They'd like to sign an extension. So you get a lot of that. Occasionally there's an exception. I'll never forget Anton Bleed basically straight up telling us he was gone. But Pat Maroon said, I would love to stay. I really enjoyed my time here. Time here has been amazing. I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. This is a good group of guys and a great organization. In another part of his answer, he said, I had the best experience of my life and my career to be a part of this group and be a part of these guys that really, truly care. That's someone who's been on 3 cup-winning teams.
Didn't he also say he wishes he could go back in time to 2019 and play for the Bruins instead of the Blues? Didn't he say that too in that quote?
Yeah, like he again, like part of it, like
we would have taken it back then. Yeah, send him over.
Obviously, he's like I said, like he's really laying it on thick, but even if that is like an exaggeration a little bit, like
I do think he genuinely wants to be here. I do believe that part of it, like the basic yes or no, does he want to stay? I think the answer is yes. I think I wonder what his reasons are. But besides the team and being close to the team, I feel like he felt valued in the locker room. I feel like people looked at him with a lot of respect. I think he just like the way he was treated. I know that part of his answer too was about how he didn't think he was able to give his best with the Bruins because he was just recovering from back surgery. So he hopes that they bring him back next year and he can really bring, what he actually does. Because he was a little bit hindered by the fact that he was just coming right off an injury right into the lineup. So yeah, I personally think there's still value. The same value found for him this year. They still exist next year because you do not have Milan Lucic, who you brought in last offseason, who we all know what happened with, and he's no longer with the team. But it felt like there was a void for that kind of player. He filled it. There's going to be another void if he's gone. So you either re-sign him or you find someone that can do it, and maybe he's a little bit younger. But I don't mind the idea of bringing him back. I don't know if he's looking for or what the market is for him for, like, is a team going to promise him like he gets to play a majority of the season, or is he okay kind of being like healthy scratch once a month or twice a month or whatever, like, or however much. But yeah, I like the idea of bringing him back. I don't think it's going to cost a lot. I think he's a good fourth liner, and he's one of the only guys who sticks up or has the ability to make guys think twice about running your star players.
So Bridget, you just gave your opinion. You would take him back. He was making $1 million, right? So I can't see him making more than $1 million going forward. Probably $1 million. Scott, a lot of people would say, he's too slow. He can't keep up. He doesn't impact the play enough. So I'm with Bridget. If he's making $1 million around there, maybe a little bit less, hopefully. Look, is he the fastest player? No. In fact, is he the slowest player? He actually might be. But all the intangibles that he brings
over so much less than some of the other fourth liners that they've had over the last few years, that it's like his value, he makes up for it. And when he's on the boards, when he has the puck, he does the right thing with it every time. Whereas some of the guys, they try to start the breakout and it turns right back into their zone. And it's like, no, every time I'm watching him play a puck around the boards and try to get it out, it's like, it's out. It's where it needs to go.
He makes the right plays. He's not the fastest skater, obviously, but what he brings to a team on the ice and off the ice is veteran presence, leadership, championship pedigree, knowing what it takes to win. And you mentioned it, Bridget. He can police the game from the Bruins' perspective if anybody tries to take liberties. And yes, another good point you made is he was coming off back surgery. Give him another full off season. You're not asking for him to be anybody more than what he is. So, Scott, my question to you is his lack of foot speed problematic enough for you to not want him next year to be re-signed, assuming it's probably for little money?
Yeah, I'm fine with him coming back. He's eligible for a 35 plus contract, which means you can, on a 1-year deal, you can throw in bonuses. So like you could maybe even get him for a veteran minimum cap hit, and then say, here's an extra 300,000 in bonuses that you could earn with whatever, 20 games played or 10 points or something, relatively attainable. So I would be open to it as long as as long as there's a clear understanding that he's not guaranteed an everyday spot, because I do think at this point in his career, on a true contender, he's probably not an everyday player. If he's okay with that, if he's okay being in and out and sometimes being the 13th or even 14th forward, I'd be okay with that. If he wants to go somewhere where he's going to
a bonus that says if you do end up in the lineup for X amount of games, then as you assuming because you're playing well enough to have earned your games and whatnot, that could be a bonus that you throw in for him.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I said 20 games or something. Make it pretty easily attainable. But yeah, if he's okay with that, then absolutely. If he wants to go somewhere where he's going to be guaranteed to play pretty much every day, or if he wants more than $1 million, then it might not work out. I'm certainly not going. I'm not committing any even 1.2 million. I'm at that point, I would probably just walk away and say, thanks, we loved having you, but we're gonna invest that money elsewhere.
Do you think that there are a lot of teams that are going to guarantee him playing every day?
Well, yes, but not cup contenders. What I could see now, different player. Nick Foligno's better, but the Blackhawks obviously way overpaid Nick Foligno. They didn't care because they're so far under the cap. They're we just need a leader, which Nick Foligno is. So some bad team or some young team that needs some leadership and some toughness. Yeah, someone could swoop in and give him 2 years, $2 million a year, because what the hell do they care? They're not up against the cap, so it doesn't matter. So that's the choice he has to make. Is does he want one last, really solid paycheck, or does he just want to be on a winning team and he's okay not playing every day?
Yeah. Hey, I'd be happy if he wanted to sign here. So that's just my opinion on it. And it sounds like he's more than willing to. So I say bring him back. But is there any other news that we missed from Breakup Day that you guys wanted to mention?
Nothing off the top of my head other than the fact that we have another podcast this week, which will be covering the ownership and management brass speaking. Scott, who exactly is speaking?
Charlie Jacobs, Cam Neely, Don Sweeney, and Jim Montgomery. And that's Wednesday afternoon. So yeah, probably, I don't know, sometime maybe Thursday morning we're recording.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Oh, by the way, guys, since it's the off season, well, not quite yet, because we're still, Scott's moving over to some Celtics coverage. I'm covering the PWHL. So not off season, but I do have a lot more time on my hands. So I was working on some graphics, and I don't know if Scott noticed this, that I added this. And I'm gonna make one that I can pop up just directly on his face, over to the over.
I was not expecting
on him,
that,
but neither was Scott. Did you see that one coming, Scott?
No, but I do like that it covers your face.
I think I'm gonna move it to on his third of the screen. so that it just pops up and it's just Scott's Pops. For those who are listening and not watching, it's Scott's face over a popcorn, which I also turned into stickers. I turned into a popcorn container. I've turned into a popcorn bag. I don't know, Scott. I stuck one up in the office. I gave some away. My brother put one on at a ski resort in Wyoming. So they're all over the world now.
Somehow you got on a billboard on 95 South. I don't know how you did that. And then I also think you should somehow reach out to Home Goods.
I can't believe you used the skate pod budget on that, Bridget.
Yeah, all 2 cents of it. And then
this is what happens when I'm bored. Every time I'm bored, it has a negative effect on Scott.
I feel like
there's some psychological issues there that you know. I don't think we have time to fully dive into, but
I wish I could make it so that once I hit the button, it also muted your mic, so it just was your face. Like,
if anybody's been in a line at Marshall's or Home Goods or whatever those stores are, when like there's the most random thing of like being sold
caramel
in the line.
popcorn.
Yeah, like that's exactly where these should be. So I don't know if we need to send an email to those stores, Bridget, TJ Maxx or whatever, but
well, we're trying to get the Scott's Pop brand up and going. So maybe at some point we have our own side business of popcorn, you know, caramel corn, and it all just has Scott's face on it. This is also what it looks like when Scott calls me. This is what pops up.
Is mine a picture of the nosebleed?
Yes. Yours is the black eye.
I'll tell you that people think I took a blow. They should see how much damage the pole had. So
should have seen the other guy.
Yeah. Anyway,
more to come because I'm bored this summer, so more graphics on the way.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, that'll wrap it up for this episode. To all of our listeners, and I mean all of our listeners, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.